John Duhig, European Foundation for Democracy. You're presenting your report on the integration of refugees in Europe to the European Parliament today. What did your study look into, and what exactly did you find?
So our research was into how refugees are integrated into 7 European countries, so Austria, Germany, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, Denmark and Sweden. And we interviewed 245 individuals over the course of a few months. And of those 245, 131 were refugees. So what makes our report very interesting and exciting is that we hear firsthand from those refugees and asylum seekers what their aspirations are, what their hopes are, what their fears are. And our report effectively reflects a number of those issues. And so many refugees, asylum seekers, they're keen to integrate. They want to, whether they stay for 4 months or whether they stay for 20 years, they feel that they would like to integrate correctly into European societies. And our research has shown that very often they are not aware of the different policies and practices and issues that they need to be made aware of.
Is there any best practice that you can highlight from your study?
There are many good practices that we found in our study, in our report. Many good practices in individual countries. There are some bad practices as well. But some of the good practices that we discovered include mentoring programs that different countries have, that civil society organizations undertake. So in Austria and Germany, in Belgium, and Denmark, all of them, where mentoring programs for refugees and asylum seekers help to integrate people into the labour market, but also into society.
Did you find examples of bad practice? They were actually counterproductive?
Yes, there were bad practices that we saw across the countries, the 7 countries surveyed. And many of the all governments in the 7 countries delegate services to non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, to help integrate refugees. Now, they don't always know who they are funding to provide these services. So, if you like, one of the bad practices was that governments don't necessarily have proper evaluation and monitoring systems to understand who those organizations are and what the funding that they give them is used for. So that was of concern.
Going forward, looking at the future of, in particular, Syrian refugees here in Europe, what would you like to see change?
I think it's very important that European governments deal directly with refugees themselves and not with representative organizations that claim to represent refugees or claim to represent religious communities. It's really important that governments engage directly with those that are most affected by their policies. And I think that across Europe is something that's really important that should take place.
And finally, what would you like to see happen at a European Union level? A lot of what you're talking about requires either local or national action.
Absolutely. Many of the governments that we serve, they have their own policies for integrating refugees, of course. But I think at the European level, there are certainly things that the EU could do, and mapping out the different policies and programs and practices and good practices as well as bad practices. It would be very important for the European Union to map those out and make them available, and perhaps through technological means make them available to refugees so that they can access them easily. Because one of the things we found was that because of the plethora of different policies, programs, refugees have no idea where to go. They have no idea where to turn. So this could be something very useful and very important. Monitoring, of course, the funding of organizations that are involved in refugee integration is also something that the EU should be more careful of.